Good afternoon, everybody, and we are so excited to start off and kick off our event. And if you are tuning in from LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, just drop a comment. Hi, have you had lunch yet? What time is it over? If you are not in Malaysia and somewhere else tuning in, just comment, and I would love to see some of the comments that are coming in. So we have an exciting guest today, but to tell you a bit more about the event that we're having here today. So we have a special edition week named 3 R's. Okay, it's not reduce, reuse, and recycle. It is re-strategize, reskill, and restart. And we have an exciting panel of shows coming up, featuring guests from the 11th to 17th September. And we have our first guest today, Alina Amir from Arus Academy. And I'll introduce her with a lot of respect and honor in a bit. But I want to show you two more sessions that are coming up that includes Professor Dr. Pradeep Nair from Taylor's University and Datuk Nora A. Mana from Maybank. And our goal is to help you explore and emphasize the importance of reskilling and upskilling throughout a personage. Whether it's for parents to support their youths, whether it's for young adults that are building blocks for their future career, or specifically for organizations to make a shift on how to develop their employees continuously. So yes, we have a cool, really, really interesting guest coming along, and they will share a lot of insights, and of course, we have burning questions for them as well. Yeah, I see some comments coming in. Nigesh says hi. Usually Nigesh is the host for Tech Talk by Necole as well, but today he's in the background. And he said, yeah, I'm all ready for the show and hear the discussion with Alina. Same, I have exciting questions that's coming up. All right. So for those who are still tuning in, if you have heard of Arus Academy and if you know who they are, do a quick shout out on the comments for Alina as well. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce you our special guest. And she is no other than Alina Amir, and she's from Arus Academy, right? She's the CEO and also the co-founder of Arus Academy. And before this, she was with Teach for Malaysia. And she's been doing a lot of work. I've read a bit about her, and she's done a lot of work with social enterprise, whether it's to do with education or just helping people in underprivileged communities as well. So it's been very heartwarming to look and see from the outside of her life, but today we have her on board, and if you have any questions, do drop in the comments as well, and I'll try to get that at the end of our show. All right, so without further ado, let's welcome Alina Amir with a back clap. Yay! Hi, welcome Alina. How are you?
I'm good, Andrea. Thanks for having me on today.
It's an honor for us to have you on as well, and we're so excited. And without wasting too much time, I'm gonna jump in right into the questions that we really have for you. Okay, so I mean the COVID-19 pandemic took educators by surprise. I mean when we went back to like early 2020s, late 2019s, and stuff like that, we saw like schools were panicking. They didn't know what to do, whether to shut down or continue, whether they could carry out the SOPs of social distancing with 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds running around. And nationwide, eventually they were forced to close. Unprepared teachers went into this new world of intensified online learning and also teaching. So Arus Academy actually collaborated with PwC Malaysia to run an upskilling program called KGDL. So it's Community Guru Digital Learning, and the new one is Community Guru Digital Learning Plus. All right. So for those who have not heard of it, do Google it up and look up Arus Academy and see what they have done. But let's hear it from the person who's involved all the time with this. So this was born as a response to empower teachers to ensure continuity in teaching and learning. So how did Arus Academy help to train these teachers when the COVID-19 pandemic happened? So it's time for your story.
Okay, so a little bit of a backstory to KGDL, Community Guru Digital Learning. The Community Guru Digital Learning program was actually a collaboration between ARUS, the Ministry of Education, as well as UNICEF Malaysia. Once that was set up and went live, we then developed a new program called KGDL Plus together with PwC. Now, why I can still remember the days of designing that particular program because it was very, very fast and very, very quick. When the school closure was announced last year, it was during the school holidays. So it was even worse for the teachers, right? They had all of their books, notebooks, everything was in school. because it was also school holidays, some of them was also back in their hometown, not in the same state as the school that they're teaching. So a lot of their resources were everywhere. Some was even balik kampung without their laptop, without anything, just their phones. And when school closure was announced and we went into MCO at that time, there was a lot of panic because we didn't know, the teachers especially didn't know how to get in touch and how to run digital learning. At that point, Arus decided, you know what, there's no time to waste. We need to start supporting our teachers. At that point as well, almost everything we planned for was for physical teacher training. We weren't planning for anything that was anything remote as what KGDL is at this point. So what we decided to do was we were going to send out surveys, and we were going to do it quick. So in 1 week, we sent out a survey to teachers, and we got about like 1,300 teachers from across the country to respond to the survey and letting us know what was their biggest hurdle, what was needed of them, and the kind of skills that they wanted to explore. And it ranges from normal, like I have zero knowledge about tech, to like, okay, how do I make my online classroom engaging? And when we developed this, it was also together with the Ministry of Education at that point, launching the digital platform where all of these resources were on. But the teachers and the students were still not familiar with this platform. Even though we've had Google Classroom for years, Microsoft Teams for years, we were not actively on them. We were told that it was important, but there was no sense of urgency that we needed to like really know how to use it until the pandemic came about. And so KGDL was basically that it is meant for teachers from zero. So if you were to go through this, there's about 5 modules in KGDL. The first module itself is how do you get on the KPM and MOE's digital platform? How do you use your email to then log in into all of this, up to how do you run online assessment, and how do you then make sure that your digital learning environment is a positive one. So KGDL is meant to help teachers from zero and hopefully being able to run a simple online teaching that is effective and meaningful for the students. And that's the story of KGDL, the online course. Once that was set up, we thought we needed to do more for the teachers who were already familiar with the platform. What can they do? So that is when we created KGDL Plus together with PwC. And KGDL Plus is one step higher because the teachers who goes through KGDL Plus is required to create online digital teaching resources that is then pulled into a resource bank so that other teachers across Malaysia can see an exemplary teaching materials, be it quizzes, be it presentation slides, games that they created, exams. So, all our exams were paper-based, right? Now everything has been turned into, Google Forms so that it can be automated and graded automatically. So those are the things that KGDL Plus was doing. And with PwC team, there were also many, many volunteers who came in, took lesson plans, turned them into beautiful PowerPoint slides so that the teachers can then go back into the digital classroom and present it in a more effective way. So that's the difference between KGDL and KGDL Plus. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for clarifying and telling us how did KGDL became a plus. All right, and I'm very curious, because when you said that Arus Academy did not wait, you ran immediately into it and you knew that okay, you need to take the smallest steps possible and then run with it. I'm just very curious for my personal curiosity. How many people did you have with you running KGDL? Like maybe in the first few months.
I think there was literally 4 of us running KGDL.
4? Wow.
4 of us. And the crazy thing was when KGDL was first launched, because everything was virtual, right? We got thousands of teachers signing up. And
Wow,
that's the
okay.
power of going virtual. With just 4 people creating this entire course, we were able to reach out to thousands of teachers who come from across the country. We when we were tracking who was signing up for our courses, it was almost 50-50. 50% were teachers dalam bandar in the city, and 50% were teachers luar bandar. So we were able to track all of this. And it was very encouraging to know that our teachers were actually really looking for something. They were not
Mm.
like pandemic, right? No, they were actually really going out looking for resources, asking for help, and wanting to upskill themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's amazing, right? Hearing the numbers, it's a big shock for me because four is like really four four people. And I'm very curious, especially the teachers who are at ground zero. The willingness is of course at 100%. If they sign up itself, that's a really good sign for our country and the teachers that we have. But those who are at zero, like they don't know how to use their emails, they don't even know how to log into the Google Calendar, that must take a lot of manpower to teach them step by step. I mean, how did you how did four of you do it?
So I think breaking it down into chunkable notes, chunkable video tutorials, things that are fast and quick, rather than having them come into like really long sessions where they watch as lecture and stuff like that. So the way we have chunked up the content on KGDL, I think was a part that was really helpful. In fact, if I were to look back into KGDL, I still think it could be chunked up even more. So today, when post KGDL this year, we're working together with Google Malaysia to make sure that we get 5,000 teachers in Malaysia become a Google certified educator. And to do this, they actually have to take exams. They have to take level 1 exams, level 2 exams, and these are exams that are not easy. They actually have to study for it. They actually have to know how to use Google tools for teaching. Not just, oh, I know how to Gmail, I know how to use Google Slides. No. How do you do this with students? What can you do with Google Slides to make it interactive, etc., etc.? And if I were to compare the courses that we were able to build this year and compare it with the courses we built last year, this year was quick. It was videos nothing more than 3 minutes, notes nothing more than a page. Da, 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 da. So as we evolve and learn from our teachers, and we learn about how people just generally across the ages cannot focus for a long period of time. And so we needed to like recreate our content, make it super interactive, make it super entertaining, just so that the teachers were able to finish the course on time, effectively, and take the exam and pass them. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, hearing you speak about, now that you look back, you want to chunk it all out again. Spoken like a true educator and somebody who is constantly re-strategizing, reskilling, and restarting. That's exactly what we do, right? We look at our drafts and be like, that could be much better. Let's do it another way. And I think it's amazing that you partner with Google as well, because then it gives some kind of incentive, I would assume, for teachers to say, hey, I completed a certification with Google on how to teach using technology. So before I go on with the second question, I mean the actual second question, besides my curiosity, I'm going to read some of the comments that are coming in from our viewers. And one of it is Sashi, he's also on backstage, but he has a question, or rather a statement. He says that he teaches tuition at a center part-time, and he often see that even when there is a slight change in the way things are done, the process, for example, there is resistance. Right, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later. So Sashi, hold on to your question. We're going to talk about resistance as well, because with this 3R, you will also have a plus R, lah, which is resistance. And then we have from Roshan, great stuff, Alina Amir, and he's looking forward to the Q&A session. So I assume that he will have a lot of questions for you too. And I have a meow day says, interesting. Hi, Andrea and Alina. And Sashi also mentioned another one. When it's like the pandemic, when it's a must to change, acceptance is either immediate or gradual. But when the change is not a must, what is the best way to get teachers to buy into new ideas and processes? So I think before we take that question, I think let's continue on with some of the questions first. We'll understand a bit more about KGDL and different teaching programs, and then we'll go into the very tough questions. Okay, let's cut Alina a little bit of slack first. Okay, second question that we have, when the pandemic hit as well, a lot of people are trying to put or pull resources together to help teaching. Especially, I mean, looking at the government schools in Malaysia, a lot of areas are struggling, not just because only the infrastructure is not there, but they've never touched anything digitally or virtual learning. Even teaching is tough. It's a complete new skill, if I dare say so, right? So how is KGDL and KGDL Plus different from the other teachers learning programs?
So I think KGDL and KGDL Plus looks at the skills of digital teaching. I think we don't focus on, okay, this is how you teach math, this is how you teach language, this is how we don't focus on that. We actually focus on how, regardless of what you're teaching, how can you make your teaching engaging and meaningful? Regardless of what you're assessing, how can you then design your assessment to really gauge whether your students understand what you're teaching? So in the classroom, right, you can actually see who's sleeping, who's not, who's handing in their homework, who's not. In the virtual world, it's much more difficult than that. And KGDL and KGDL Plus really tells the teachers this: we're going virtual, but please, please, please use the technology that reaches your child. Do not go into an application that is too heavy where nobody is able to go on because they have no internet. In fact, KGDL and KGDL Plus, we actually help teachers to create Telegram bots, WhatsApp teaching. We tell them, if this technology reaches your child, then it is the best technology. If your child is learning because you're using WhatsApp, if your child is learning because you're using Telegram, even though in comparison with other teachers who's using Google Meet, Zoom, and all that, whatever technology that reaches your child, that's the best one. Go with it, and let's design a learning experience that could meet that application, that could meet that kind of tech. And we're very agnostic with our tech. So even though we partner up with Google, but we don't go all out and say all teachers should be using Google. We go back, we speak to our teachers who needed Telegram bot helps. We help them and create those for them. In fact, after that, teachers were creating so many Telegram bot classes that they were running their own webinars and training for other teachers, because they were able to create a very meaningful Telegram bot that could teach their child without them having to constantly be there and answering questions, when the bot could do it for them.
I think that's really amazing. I think two things I'll take from that is, number one is, it's very heartwarming to hear from ground sentiments, from you and your experiences, that teachers are moving forward with what you give them. I think that's very heartwarming to hear, because as much as I love to say that, you teach somebody to fish and then they go and fish lah, right? But not everybody does that, right? They have the rod, but not everybody will go and punching the ikan. So I mean, to hear that a lot of the teachers are doing that, it is very heartwarming, and I love that. I think the second thing that I want to take also is that KGDL doesn't specifically focus on a specific platform, right? And that's the topic of today, right? The right platform for the future generation. I like one, the thing that can reach the kid or the child or the student or the person that you're reaching out to. That would be the right platform for the person. Now, as an educator, then your sort of responsibility is to tweak it to make that content fit into that platform and then deliver. I think that's amazing, and I love that. I think the next question is, this is a interesting question. So the unstable internet connection, as we all know, is one big issue, and especially with low bandwidth and stuff like that. But what were other challenges that Arus Academy faced? So were there resistance, right? That is the big question.
There were so many resistance. I think when you say online teaching, right, for teachers who are new to it, it's very overwhelming. I don't know where to start. I honestly don't know where to start. And just looking at, okay, I'm given a email address, I am given a password. Both my email address and the password was not something I created for myself, and it's all random numbers. Suddenly I'm given all of this data, right? And I just don't know what to do with it. And because it went remote, right, teachers had to work 24/7 because the child do not have the devices the same time the teacher has devices. And so Teachers had to answer questions late at night. Teachers had to answer questions early in the morning. And then in the middle of the day, just silence because the child doesn't have the devices with them. So there were many resistance in terms of how the teachers were taking it, because it gets very stressful. And people need to remember that teachers themselves also have children of their own who's also going through digital teaching and learning, right? And for them to be taking care of other child, seeing their own child struggling with remote learning is also very stressful. And I think all of this stress on top of unstable internet, devices that are not compatible, and just imagine us going into a meeting where people are just breaking up. It's damn frustrating. But for these teachers, right, they are running 4 or 5 classes a day, every single day. And it can really take a toll on a person. And that is why on Arus's side, I think the first step that we always take with our teachers is empathy. It's okay. If you guys are angry, right, we will listen to it. Like, express it. Be angry at things. You are okay. We completely understand. And sometimes we're frustrated, but we try to take a step back instead of like saying, cikgu, typical lah, very lazy. We stop ourselves from saying that and try to imagine, I have a 3-year-old and I'm struggling. Imagine if I had like 5 kids who also going through all of this. I cannot imagine the struggle and the stress that the teachers are going through. And I think the challenges were many, were many. The pushback were many as well. But they will come to a point where they are so familiar with the tech that they would come back to us and said and thank us, because they would say things like, I never thought I could learn new things at this age. And we're working with teachers who are not young. These teachers have been in the service for more than 20 years. And every time change happens, they're the ones who's living it and going through it. And for teachers who are, 1 or 2 years going to pension already, they have to upskill today, and they come back to us and say, you know what? I didn't think I could do this, but just going through your course, having someone there to hold my hand at the beginning was very helpful. And now I don't feel like I'm struggling anymore. So the light is there. Sometimes it's dim, but we're very sure it's there.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing, right? There's something, I have friends who are also teachers and they do online learning, and I listen to their stories, both private schools and stuff like that. Um, she mentioned something to me. So sometimes her kids will complain to her when she's teaching. She's like, I don't know how to turn this on when they first started online learning, and they use Zoom and Google Meets and stuff like that. And the kid was like, I don't do it, she'll just throw a tantrum. And then the teacher will be like, hello, I'm almost 30, and if I can do it, you're so young, you can do it too. So she told me this story, and I really laughed out loud, because I'm like, that is so true. People that unfortunately, the stigma and the stereotype of teachers is like, they only learn when they need to, or they won't be able to upskill themselves. They're always going to be stuck in whatever the schools are teaching them to teach the students. And to hear it from you, to say that teachers were almost in pension, almost 60, right, around that age, saying that I didn't know I can do this, that's amazing. And that shows how if people are willing to relearn or reskill or upskill themselves, they can do it. And I love that. I think I will move on to the next question. I think there's one that's coming in the comment. Let me see. Okay, so we're gonna answer Shashi's question, right? So he's talking about acceptance and change. So he says, what's the best way to get teachers to buy into new ideas and processes? I mean, there are teachers who sign up, showed that they want to, but were there teachers that were sort of not forced to, but they were involved in this thing and they weren't very willing to learn? Were there any ways that you guys helped them ease into this idea and these different processes?
Yes, definitely. With all of our programs, you would see different kinds of personalities coming in, right? But I think 2 things that was very important. Number one is to show them that it's easy, because when it comes to new tech, people tend to think, oh, very difficult, But number one is to really show it that it's easy. Number 2, the way we run our training, we always simulate whatever we say we were going to do. So for example, I'm going to tell you, okay, I'm going to teach you using Google Slides in a way that is very interactive. And we put our teachers and ask them to become students themselves. And we go through this as if they're going through a lesson with us. And simulation for us is extremely important. If the teachers cannot see an exemplar lesson that is engaging, they cannot imagine it in their head. They've never gone through it. They don't know how it looks like. And so we usually convert our teachers the moment the simulation ends, because they can see that, okay, that was actually really engaging. I was able to follow what the teacher was teaching. She makes it look super easy. How can I start right now? And so I think showing the ease of it and showing the efficiency of it is two of the best ways to convert our teachers. Yeah.
Okay, I totally agree. It's just like when I teach my parents how to use Facebook a long time ago. Now my father and my mom is like addicted to Facebook because they're so excellent at it. But they say the same thing, right? It's so hard, because like you mentioned earlier, right? When you give them in the chunk, it becomes so overwhelming. Like they don't speak the language that we are speaking. But if you show them, okay, this is how you do it. This is how it's done. Very simple steps, right? The teachers now become excellent learners. And I really also like that. Yes, you're gonna say something.
Now, I just wanted to also add, I think making sure that the teacher is in the right mindset, that we are
Mm.
actually currently in a pandemic, yeah. So you don't put the same expectations as if we're not in a pandemic. So if you say, oh, I go into this online teaching, right? None of them is responding to me. And I'm like, isn't that normal? It's okay. It's okay. If people don't want to switch on their camera during class time, it's okay. There are other ways that they can be engaging. They can use a chat. They can use all others. You can use quizzes to show whether they are still listening or not. It gets stressful when you compare your performance during a pandemic with your performance pre-pandemic, which doesn't make sense, which I think most of us did, including myself. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was super stressful because I thought, why am I not as efficient as before? And then I stepped back and I asked myself a question: am I not a good mother? Am I not a good teacher? And I see, my mom raised 5 kids. She could do it. Why can't I do like raise 1 kid? And then I realized none of them raised a kid during a pandemic. So it's okay. None of them had to teach during a pandemic. So it's okay. Whatever we're doing, if we're still doing it, then it's already, a small success to be celebrated. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing, right? The importance of empathy and also that self-compassion that teachers, or rather anybody, everybody in the pandemic need to have, right? Speaking kind words to yourself. I think it's really tough as well. And like you mentioned, if you have an expectation that was for a very different time, as if it was many years ago, but it was just like about a year ago, then you are going to be very frustrated and you're going to blame yourself and everybody else possibly around you. And I think that's a very good takeaway point. The mindset, right? If they're ready to actually sit down and be compassionate with themselves and also start learning new ways to do this. Okay, we have 2 more comments coming in. Eva, she said that during the pandemic, teachers become learners, like we mentioned, in terms of not only becoming tech savvy, but also making sure their students' learning are being delivered effectively, right? So, in your opinion, how do educators make sure their students are being attentive in the virtual class, as even adults have short attention spans? And you mentioned this just now, right? If they don't turn on their cameras, it's okay. So how do you do that with teachers? How do you teach them, okay, if that doesn't happen, try something else? How do you change that mindset?
So I have a more radical thought about all this. When it comes to online classes, right? It does not make sense for you to go online just to listen to a 45-minute lecture. I say, and I always say this to teachers, online time is not for lecturing. Yeah, lecturing should be before that. You should be recording yourself, put this up on YouTube cover, turn this into a note, put it as a pre-reading. Online time should be engaging discussion time where you're brainstorming with each other and you're not there to listen. If you're there to listen, they would rather go to YouTube. So why would you waste your students' time? So again, people think that, oh, Pre-pandemic, when I go into class, I lecture ma. So pandemic also, when I go into class, I lecture lah. But it's not. It cannot be of the same because the environment is different, the experience is different, and you need to sort of adapt. And even though teachers say, oh, I need to finish up my time, 45 minutes, berapa masa, berapa waktu lah, I need to, yes, so your 45 minutes do not have to be a lecture. In fact, we always tell our teachers, right, the first 15 minutes you want to lecture can, but after that, it's all activity and discussions already. Yeah, so that your students want to come to the classroom, your students are actively engaging throughout, and they're not just sitting there watching. Because if they're sitting there watching, they would rather watch YouTube. Yeah.
Correct. And I love that also because sometimes when teachers or educators or even ourselves, when we have such a fixed mindset, right? We always think that it has to be like this. It has to fall like a zigzag, that kind of thing. But then when you take a step back and look back, actually if you record much earlier, right, they can watch anytime. They can watch in portions. They don't have to worry about internet connection got cut off, cannot hear the teacher, don't know what she's saying. Wasted, right? Like you said, why waste your students' time? I think that's an excellent point. And Sashi, say amen. I totally agree with this. Nigesh also say completely agree with that point, Alina. I think that's amazing. And another question Nigesh also answered, asked, sorry. When it comes to digital tools, kids these days are amazing. It looks like it comes naturally to them. Perhaps if teachers who are parents can partner the learning with their kids or students. As the teachers teach the knowledge, the kids help the teachers with the digital tech. So it's like cross learning. What do you think of that?
I think one of the silver lining of the pandemic in education is that we see parents' involvement skyrocketed lah. If before this, right, parents send their kids to school, barely know what is going on. Now parents can listen in to what the teachers are saying. Parents actually are commenting on how difficult the curriculum is. Parents now realize how difficult learning is for the child. And I think we should be embracing this during this pandemic as well as post-pandemic. This parent-teacher-student relationship is actually extremely important, and involvement from all these three parties is as important. But of course, this does not mean that every kind of family structure is able to do this, right? As a student is learning, sometimes their parents are not there. Sometimes their parents are also tech illiterate. So when we talk about support, right, it has to be support from at every level. Support for the teacher, yes. Support for the child, yes. Support for the parents as well. Because when there's anything that's going on with the laptop at home, with the internet at home, who's troubleshooting this? If the parents doesn't know how to troubleshoot, the child doesn't know how to troubleshoot, then that's it. The day is gone. And so parents having the mindset that I need to be involved with my child's education. If I'm not involved, my child is not going to excel and not going to do well, is the kind of mindset we have been wanting in this education system for years. We've always wanted parents' involvement throughout. We've been talking about this, about it takes a village to raise a child. It literally does. And so I'm happy to see more of parents' involvement. I don't really care if parents are angry, if parents are sad, if parents are happy, as long as I know you're feeling this because you are actively involved in your child's journey.
And I also like that because we also believe in the need for an ecosystem, right? For something to work, all the gears need to pushing together. That kind of mindset. And there's a question that comes with Sashi. He said he'll love to hear your take on effectiveness of virtual learning versus physical learning, either from the teachers and or students' points of view. And he said that he knows that you said you can't compare pre and post pandemic, but the experience is different. But how do you see its effectiveness?
So this is a very interesting question. I love this question because it gives me an opportunity to really explore the different kinds of learners. And throughout this pandemic, throughout these 2 years that we've been working with, we don't just work with teachers, we also work with students. And we get students' feedback on what they like and what they don't dislike, and what they dislike. And some students are completely in love with virtual learning. They feel empowered. They feel like they know exactly where they're going. They feel empowered of their own timeline as well. Like I can learn at night, I can learn in the morning, I can schedule this myself. And some students who are just completely lost. Like if I don't have a schedule, I don't know where to go, I don't know how to do this. So it really does differ. But what I see could be a potential pathway once this pandemic is over is really embracing blended hybrid learning. We see this super effective for students who are independent. We can create as many MOOC, as many open courses as possible, but you don't see very high completion rate for open source courses. You would see 15 to 20%. 20% completion rate considered very high already. So what happens to 80% of them who don't complete a course, right? And this is all, this comes back to merging the two, because you can introduce an online course to a child, but the motivation actually comes from actual engagement with teachers, coming together with your peers, going to school, having that social environment. And really, if we were to go into post-pandemic, go back to school, I really hope that teachers, the ministry is considering a hybrid blended environment rather than pandemic is gone, everything is physical now, because it doesn't work for everybody.
Yes, and I think that's really interesting. I mean, when we look at our stats for Necole as well, the reason why we have very high engagement rates is because we also have this idea of blended learning in all factors, right? We humans don't learn just one way. And I'm not talking about formats. I'm talking about the interactions you have with other learners, with other experts, with other community. And interesting, you mentioned that students now need to learn how to have this autonomy, right? Have this responsibility over their own schedule. Interestingly, university students are also struggling. So everybody is struggling at the same plane. Just different environment, but it's the same struggle. And I think that's very interesting to see how we're going to come out after this, right? And this question is a follow-up question because we're talking about physical learning. So saying that, when we return to fully physical classes, or, when schools are open, pandemic is over, nothing's going to happen and you don't need to do anything virtual anymore. Do you think that these teachers that were partaking in KGDL or KGDL Plus, who are part of this community that you've built, would continue digitalizing, will continue digitalize learning methods? Will they continue to use the tools that you've set for them? Tough question, I know, but I'm a very cheeky person, so I'm going to ask you that.
See, we actually saw this, a few months back. A few months back when school reopened, right? When COVID was still not under control, but we opened up school and kids went back to school, the teachers left the digital world.
Oh, no.
And then thinking that this was going to be the new norm, the old norm is going to be the new norm. And they thought, okay lah, back to school. What's the point of Google Classroom and all that? And then school closed up again. This, if we don't take that as a sign, as an indicator of what's going to be repeated, right? Like we're going to open up school soon in October, hopefully.
Yep.
If they do not embrace the digital world and school closes up again, we're going to do a lot of catch-up work. And the thing that people need to understand is catch-up work is a lot more difficult than actual work. Doing catch-up work with students is going to take much, much longer. And so the only way for us to do this is to understand that the digital world is not going to go away, that the digital world needs to be there because that's our plan B. And our plan, we need to make sure that our plan B is strong, it's resilient, and it is able to take on any uncertainty in the future. The pandemic has shown us that our education system is fragile, that the moment we had a pandemic, it broke down. So how do we create a system that is resilient throughout and ageless? So we need to be embracing all of this new tech. We need to know and navigate. We need teachers, right, cannot just know how to teach anymore. Teachers need to be very creative. Teachers need to be very resourceful. Teachers need to be data-driven. And these are all additional skills that was not very important back then, but it's going to be extremely important in the future. So when people say, okay, what, anybody can be teachers, what? Are you sure anybody can be teachers?
Go and try.
I doubt it. I highly doubt it. So when Ministry of Education was announcing, oh, we have a shortage of teachers, people say, hey, teachers, if you have passion, you go teach lah. I agree that if you have the passion, you can teach. But I also think that in the future, teachers will actually need the teaching profession is a professional profession, and so you need to know your tech. You need to know if you are. People always say, "Oh, teachers are the CEO of the classroom." Did we prepare our teachers to be CEO? Do they know how to be CEO? How have we been training our teachers to be CEO? They haven't been trained. And so I don't fully blame our teachers for not being able to reach the expectations. It's because they were as if set up for failure. So we didn't set them up for success. And moving forward, that's the thing that we should be focusing on. How do we empower our teachers? How do we say teachers are truly the CEO of their classroom? Because a good CEO would know, if there's a pandemic, how do I pivot? They would know. How would teachers know?
Yeah, and I think that's really amazing. I've never heard of this line before. No, the teachers are CEO of the classroom, because I never felt my teachers were the CEOs of the classroom. This is the first time I'm hearing it, and I think that's really excellent. And I think there's one point that you made that I wanted to sort of reiterate is, if they don't realize that they need the skills now for the future, when the future comes, it's going to be too late, and they're going to play catch up. Not just for the teaching that they're going to do, but also the generation that is stuck there, right? So, for example, I'm pretty sure you see that in Malaysia, different states are moving at different speeds now with education. People who obviously have less infrastructure is going to suffer more because they cannot reach to them in time, or rather they are not upskilled there. And that's very interesting, because when I read about KGDL, there were a few states that it was focusing on, like Kedah, Perlis, Sarawak. Was there a reason why it was focusing on these states?
Yes, these were the states who had very active state education officers, who was very open to wanting to take outsiders to train their teachers. But having said that, that was at the beginning of the pandemic last year. This year, however, we're seeing a lot more state level education officers who are very open to wanting to have outsiders upskill their teachers. So we're seeing a lot more of these partnerships happening this year, only because I feel like they have started to realize that there is no way that they could do this themselves. There's too many of those teachers, and it does not make sense not to partner up with professionals, not to partner up with people who knows what they're doing. And so I think education is so important at every level. State, district, federal, all of these different offices play an important role. So I could be working at a federal level, right? But if my state and district is not cooperative, it doesn't get the teachers on the ground. Sometimes for Arus, if we don't get a pass from state, we don't get a pass from district, we go directly to the teachers. You, Andrea. So for example, teacher Andrea, do you wanna upskill with this? You want to? Come up. So then I surpass state, federal, district. I just go to the individual. If you want to, I can help you. And that's the thing that we've been doing with the way that we train our teachers. So mentioning on KGDL Plus, it started off because the states were very friendly, were very open. But this year we're seeing a lot more states being extremely open and wanting people to come and help. Yeah.
And I also like that, because digital or virtual is very scalable, right? Like you say, you can bypass all these other hierarchies and this needless back and forth. You can straight go, if you want it, here we go. I think that's very interesting, because the MOE, the Lima portal, about when I was reading about it, I was like, this is excellent, man. If we had this 20 years ago, where would we be now, right? I would have excellent teachers, or even more excellent teachers who had other resources that can help them with the work that they're doing. And then as you know, there's a challenge as well. This teacher got a lot of excellent sort of stuff. I also want to do lah. That inspires them to have this competition to do that. So I think that's, I wish, to see that happen much earlier when I was in school. I think that would be amazing. But I'm still very glad that, like you mentioned, a lot of state officers really are very excited about this. So that's amazing. I think I have some hope for the teachers of our country and also the students. Um, I'm gonna go into a question, but before that, I think I'm gonna mention some of the comments that are coming in. So Nigesh, sorry, Sashi said that Nigesh, kids will get excited to teach as well, and I've seen how they come to life and they can share or show or how something is done. Like he mentioned about cross teaching and stuff. I think that's really cool. And I think Nigesh answered, yeah, I do think they would feel less being talked down to and more part of the process. I think that's what you mentioned, right? That empathy level. And I have a question to follow up with this. You and the team showed a lot of empathy to the teachers. Did you see whether the teachers did have a change with how they deal with their students as well?
I think it takes, I have to say, most of the teachers that we work with, they're very, very understanding of the situation that the students are in. If they're very frustrated, right, with like, oh, my students keep missing my classes, they're frustrated at that point. But most of them were able to reflect and say, okay, my students all of them do not have devices. Not all of them have internet connection. In fact, we were working with this one teacher who was extremely dedicated to his work. That he had all these lessons planned for an engaging classroom. He went online, waited for an hour, and only one person came online. And he continued to teach this one person for 1 hour. And he didn't say, oh, orang lain datang cancel lah. Tak, he didn't. He actually continued to teach for an hour. I'm sure he felt very, at that point I thought, oh, he must feel very defeated. But reading his reflection and speaking to him, he was actually very excited that one person at least came and not zero. And you see the kind of positive mindset that teachers have. And I think more and more of these teachers are having this. More and more of them are understanding that, my kids are losing parents, are losing grandparents to COVID, are losing family members to COVID. They are also going through this in a very difficult time. Them not being able to hand in their assignments on time is not all that bad. Them not coming to our live sessions is not all that bad. In fact, I, as at the management level at Arus, I'm looking at deadlines in a very fluid way already. Like, you cannot meet deadline because you're going through a hard time at work. Let's extend. Like, I don't want you to be sad doing this, right? And the pandemic allowed us to really take a pause lah. Is deadline this man-made rule of deadlines and all that? Is it really set in stone, or can we work with each other and be more compassionate with one another?
And I think it comes back to what you mentioned just now, right? That expectation of the pre and post pandemic. I find it a little bit sad that I mean, yes, everybody has to measure or benchmark ourselves against something. But there are teachers out there who are trying really hard, to get the attention of their students, to get engagement during class, yada yada yada. And at the end of the day, if it all depends on the student's response. And they take it upon themselves, like, I'm not a good teacher, I didn't learn well enough, I wasn't doing this well enough, my lesson plan was not great to get some kind of engagement. And it's really sad, right? So also, I'm going to open like a very short 30-second for you, Alina. If you could speak to the teachers out there who are feeling this way, what would you say to them?
I say that regardless of how your students are reacting to you, if you're putting effort into wanting to teach, that's good enough, right? We're in a digital world where we can only focus into our locus of control. Teachers need to understand that once we go into the digital world, you are competing with Netflix, you're competing with PUBG, you're competing with TikTok, you're competing with Instagram. It's not you, it's not you. It's everything else that is around them that if anything, right, teachers and parents should then be teaching kids how to prioritize, how to schedule, how to block their time. It's not so much of the curriculum anymore. It's not so much whether I had to teach you this darab tolak bahagi. It doesn't really matter if your students do not is not empowered of their own schedule, of their own life, of their own timeline. So if teachers could put that curriculum back a bit, focus on values, on growth, I think that could help a lot. Yeah.
All right. So I'll make sure our producer will cut that snippet out and then put there, broadcast to all our teachers who are feeling like they're horrible teachers. This is a message for you. All right. So I have a few more questions, and we're almost at the end. I have so many things to ask, but I'll go with the comments that's coming in first. Eva says that thinking moving forward, schools may need to reconsider adopting digital learning as part of their students' learning instead of responding to pandemics, like you mentioned just now. Therefore, schools may need to relook into their syllabus and curriculum instead of separating it as an IT class as a subject. And I really, really agree with this. And I have a question to follow up with this is some of the private school teachers I know, they are changing their syllabus to say that, okay, classes are now 30 minutes, 15 minutes talking, 15 minutes full-on activity, no homework after school, after online hours, and no more like doing assignments on the laptop, nothing. All of that is done during class hours. But I'm not very sure in the government sector. Maybe you can give me some kind of insight. Is the syllabus changing and how is it changing at this point of time?
So whatever Ava is commenting on, this has been around for years already. We actually have a term of it, integrasi technology in your lesson. It is part of, in fact, sometimes it's part of the lesson plan template. Which part of it are you integrating with technology? What we're seeing is, in the past, even if we don't do it, our kids were still learning. So there's no like, tak mati if I tak buat, that kind of mindset.
No need.
Yeah, because our focus have always been, are they able to provide me A's at the end of the day? Are they able to sit for the SPM and give me, guru cemerlang, sekolah cemerlang, murid cemerlang? Are they able to do that? You would hear like really senior teachers and said, oh, dulu tak ada pun all this technology, I was, best teacher, I could produce all my students pass SPM, got straight A's, I didn't have to use all this technology. So the understanding of why we need to integrate does not match the end goal. If our end goal is our teachers are more resilient, our students are familiar with technology, and our students are able to meet academics achievement, then the way we cook would be different. But if people wanted to eat something different, then we would. Letak garam, tak letak garam pun doesn't really matter, right? And that has always been the issue. You want meaningful learning experiences, you want all of this in your lesson plan, but at the end of it, it doesn't matter as long as you are able to sit for a standardized paper examination.
Okay, so that's very interesting.
The question of the purpose of education, it has been around for years already. We all of us agree, right? The purpose of education is to build you as a human being, to make you, informed global citizens. But at the end of the day, do we care? Do we measure this? No. So,
Yeah, and I love this because growing up, I always complain about the education system in Malaysia. I'm like, what are they teaching me, man? I don't know what did I learn in school. I learned everything outside of school, and I really agree with this. If there is no vision that is beyond the A's and the grades and SPM and all that, then the way we teach, the way we cook, the spices we use will be all wrong. The recipe already sesat, right? It's lost. And I love that. I hope that everybody is listening to this. And I will replay this for all my friends to watch as well. I have a few more questions. I will go with the one that's coming in by Sashi as well. He said that, have you been able to reach teachers training colleges? Perhaps getting the teacher's curriculum could help get the digitalization mindset into the larger pool and earlier in the process before they even become practicing teachers. So this is the classic teach first before they go out into the world question.
Yes, so this year we were really lucky. We were able to collaborate with University Pendidikan. We were able to collaborate with IPG. We're looking into, how can we make sure that this resilience curriculum is being introduced to pre-service teachers. So yes, so that we are even looking at other ways we can collaborate with pre-service institutions, so that we can introduce all of this before they go in service. Because once they go into the system, right, there's so many other things that need to worry about. This is just one of the many other things that need to worry about. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's excellent. Something that somebody mentioned to me before, the reason why there's incubators is so that they don't get corrupted when they go into the world. I think that's something quite similar to what's happening. And I have another question for you here. Let me see. Okay, so we talk a lot about skill sets, right? Digitalization, digital technology platforms and stuff like that. And we talk a bit about also that mindset needs to change. So this is something that Arus Academy has been actively running. Some of the initiatives to improve targeted communities through education, such as educators and students, yes. And one of the things that you all do is also developing after-school courses with girls to explore more of the STEM, right? How to solve things with robotics, science, technology, programming. And the question here is, on the ground sentiments, did you have pushback? I mean, people who didn't believe that either girls should be learning about STEM or they didn't want to change that. And how did Arus also upskill and reskill these mindsets that were stuck into that fixed, ran out of this shouldn't be happening? Yeah.
When we first started our girls program, we had our pushback from the girls themselves, from the girl students themselves, thinking that what's the point? Like, I this the I know what I'm gonna do after SPM. I'm gonna finish my SPM. I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna have kids. I know what I want to do. Like, having this extra thing doesn't change, doesn't contribute to my end goal. So again, right, what's your vision in life? And having to sit down with the girls and talking about opportunities, talking about choices, that if you really want to go and get married and be a housewife because of your own choice, we are happy with it. But because it is your only choice, then that is something that you need to rethink about. So when we introduced choices to our girls, that was when they started to list down what were their choices. Are they wanting to get married because that's the only choice? Or are they wanting to get married because they really wanted to get married? This really opened up a new way of looking at life for the girls. And I think that part really helped them understood that I can create my own choices. I don't have to follow what my moms were doing, what my sisters were doing. I can create these choices for myself. That our girl program was so successful, with the first batch of girls, that they actually have come back, interned with us, and are now teaching girls in primary school. So now we're passing on the baton. I can't be teaching every girl. I teach you so that you can then teach future girls. And we're seeing that, and I'm so glad to be seeing that in my lifetime, being able to see like the circle being closed out and the loop being closed. And that's something that we've been doing. Yeah.
And I think that's really amazing, right? That ripple effect is coming to life, and it's something actually very sustainable as well, right? It's not dependent on one person or a program. It's dependent on the mindsets that's being passed down, and I love that as well. All right, so we have one last question, as usual, this one must ask one, okay? Every program that we do or every program that you do, we always have to ask about the success. So the question is for you, how does Arus Academy measure the success of delivering KGDL or KGDL Plus?
So there were a few measurements that we put in place. Number one was the quality of work produced by the teachers at the end of the day. And number two is whether they were able to sustain these skills and be able to showcase their skills throughout their program. So we actually keep them in a we keep them in communication. We talk to them often. We track them often, and we are able to see that they were, even post program, they were still contributing to the resource bank. They were still running their own workshop, teaching other teachers, and that's one of the things that we made sure that we have. That if you were part of a program, that you must then be able to teach other teachers in your school. It's like Amway lah. If I sell this to you, you sell to 10 other people, okay? And that's how we want to measure our success. Were you able to believe in this, produce good work, and convince others to do the same? I would have to say, in total, right, with all of the programs that we've run during this pandemic itself, we were able to reach out to more than 35,000 teachers and students across Malaysia in a short period of time. And all of this was not possible if the ministry was not supportive, if the officers at every level were supportive, if the teachers and students themselves were not wanting to upskill. And I think this is somewhat like a small success for Arus to say that we should continue the work that we're doing.
Okay, all right, well spoken. I think that's amazing. 35,000 is a lot of people. I also don't know how many teachers are there in Malaysia, and 35,000 for me is a huge number. And especially, I think reaching out to regions that usually people don't focus on, like Kedah, Perlis, Sarawak. I think that's also amazing. And some of the comments that are coming in while we close our session today, Eva says it's amazing to see how active Arus Academy is in improving the community, especially the learners' mindsets, apart from their skills development. I think she said, it's great work. Yes, I totally agree. And I think I'll end with this comment as well. Something Sashi mentioned. He said that, you know, you said that at the end of the day, the teachers need to teach others, and hopefully this will start to change the way our education system is, right? Digitalization and how we teach and learn is going to change, and hopefully that will be sustainable. So it says that definitely blended learning for any chance to is for any chance to make this work. And you said 20% was very high, right? He says the global average is 5%. So can you imagine? And the interesting thing is, on Necole, our numbers are 40%. And that's where blended learning also happens a lot. So I think it's really cool. Numbers don't lie, like I always say. And I really want to thank you again for this amazing conversation and answering our questions in full depth. I think that's really cool, and to hear your stories as well. So thank you so much, Alina, for joining us today. It's been an honor. And yeah, we're gonna end with some Necole video as well. But we're gonna show you the last two episodes that's gonna come out after this. So thank you again, Alina. I really appreciate your time here, and hopefully the people who are watching this send your regards to Alina of the great work that they are doing in Arus Academy. All right, so we're gonna look forward to a few more episodes coming up. Preparing for the future careers. Is it gig economy or not? Do students need to be in a stable job or not? We will have Professor Dr. Pradeep Nair who will join us, and he's from Taylor's University. And then we have another topic called Emerge Stronger from the Crisis with Dr. Nora from Maybank. All right, so we will have exciting episodes coming about. And thank you for everybody who's tuning in from YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the other places that everyone is sharing. We hope that you would share this great episode with others as well, so that they can learn and hear great things that our teachers are doing in our country. All right, thank you so much, everybody. And that's it.